Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to RBTI online class video series lesson 27. We have reached our point of where we go into our theory training now, but we will never ever leave practical training far behind, because what's all the knowledge in the world if you don't use it for something? And of course our focus is to use it to help ourselves and help the folks we want to help feel better, get better health, get stronger, be greater witnesses for God. And there goes my wife's phone, and sorry about that, folks, but she's getting it, I think. She's still letting it go. Funny, we get everything ready and turn all the phones off in the house and everything else, and then one phone is there to go. Sorry for the disturbance, but we are going to get right into it. By the way, I wanted to let you know that I have been working very hard to finish up this diet booklet and make it more usable for each of you. Getting the foods. Remember, we're not only dealing with the calcium foods, but we're dealing with foods that have phosphorus in them, that have iron in them, that have manganese in them, that have boron in them, that have copper. Then there are the vitamins as well, vitamin C, vitamin A. We want to emphasize these, so when you do work with someone, and by the time this course is over, we will have gone through a good 25 more examples of people, and especially I hope others will send theirs in so we can work with you as well. And in these examples, as I will do today, I will be showing you how to use foods to focus on a ground diet, a foundational diet for people, so that we don't run to supplements all the time. Supplements are okay, but they serve a very useful purpose, but they cannot in and of themselves get the job done. We need a little bit of them, and I dare say that if we didn't have the low quality foods that we do have, we probably could get away with them altogether. So, anyway, let's go to prayer real fast, get into this lesson, and I think it's going to be a great lesson, a foundational lesson in RBTI theory. Lord, you are magnificent. God, when I think of all the wonderful things you've opened my mind and my eyes to, I sit here in awe, Lord, of how just blessed I am in the knowledge I have. Lord, I ask for you to help me to teach it right. Teach it so others can understand it in a way that it doesn't take so long to get it all in, and that it would come flowing out of their hearts and their heads, and that they would be able to express it to others as well, and to show that we can have good health while on this earth. We can glorify you in many, many ways, and that you are healing us daily, Lord, through your laws. And all we have to do is get in the line of those laws, the line of least resistance to your precious energy flow, Lord, the flow of the Spirit of God that will heal our bodies inside out. And I ask you to bless the rest of this lesson. Bless everyone watching this. Give them that special unction of understanding. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. As we said, today is lesson 27. And remember, lesson 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26, we dealt with how to use the diet booklet and work through all the pages in the diet booklet. Today, of course, we'll go through that again, but not all the pages. We're going to just take a look at one client here, and we're going to look at his numbers, and I'm going to show you some pictures that the numbers paint a little bit. This is a preview of things to come later on as I further develop this, as God gives me the wisdom and understanding to further develop it into a way that hopefully someday we can see literal pictures of people's bodies, where the exact problems are, like Dr. Reams did. Right now this is all being done manually. It's very time consuming, and yes, there's not a lot of hourly pay in doing things this way, but it is extremely interesting, and might do it for the purpose of being able to pass it on later on. So whether by teaching you the exact system, which will probably come, but that'll come later, but providing you a method in which you can pass numbers to me and I can provide it to you quickly, probably through a computer software program. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that, a gentleman's numbers, and then we're going to we're going to do a little bit of study of God and energy. Now we've looked at this a little bit already, but God, it's from God that all things are and come into being. And He is, we are inside of Him, so to speak. If you think of this as being God, when He sends forth His light, and He congeals that light, this takes the pureness of God and the light that He is, and begins to bring it down into anions and cations, as we see here, which are made up of Milhouse units of energy. And then those together, these together, will form atoms, which is the primordial basis for the elements. In other words, an element, of course, we'll get into this in a minute, is made of atoms that are very, very like one another. Inside, they're almost exactly the same. Then when we take several of these elements and put them to several of these atoms and put them together, we end up with molecules. And then when we take two different elements and then we put, let's say, the most popular one we know of is hydrogen and oxygen, we put those two together, we end up with compounds. It's a compounding of two elements. And then from there, then all these compounds, all these elements, everything forms the different kinds, and I'm going to show you a table today. Many of you have seen it, but maybe we can describe it in a way that makes more sense to us. All right, and then finally, what we want to do is calculate some energy today using the anions and the cations and the Milhouse units of energy. Dr. Reams, if you listen to any of his tapes, will tell you this is the entire basis in this lesson that you're going to get today for the entire Reams biological theory of ionization. So pay attention and watch it again and again and again. And of course, I will update in other lessons as well. You always look back and say that you could have done a better job, but I'm going to do the best I can here. So let's get rid of this. And again, I want to encourage anyone out there who has never sent me in their numbers for me to look at and to do some, make a consultation with. I really would appreciate it if you fill in your questionnaire, fill in your agreement form, fill in all that information that's requested, so that we could use your numbers as well as a test case, as a teaching case. Your name will not be given out, nothing like that. We'll just tell whether it's a male or female, that's all. Like we're going to do with this gentleman who is a male. So this is going to be our first example today, because we want to keep in mind, we always want to keep what we're doing in mind here, so that we don't get rusty at the practical. So we have a male, and he is, bear with me here, he's 55 years old. He's 5 feet 11 1/2 inches. And sometimes it's good to put the number of inches there. So that would be 71.5. And sometimes it's good to put the birth date. That's something I need to get in the habit of asking. I think that's going to be part of the form, to get the, what do you call it, YOB, I guess it is, YOB. He weighs 188 pounds. He's white. He has no specific religion mentioned. And his occupation is, I hope everybody can see this, is appliance repair. All right. First thing you know, he's a male. Okay, so we know we're not dealing with someone like a female who has 5 to 7 times calcium needs. 55. All right, we haven't gotten into this deeply, but let's remember where he's at in life. At age 20, we have what's called the X factor, an X factor of 1. At age 40, the X factor equals 2. At age 60, the X factor equals 3. And essentially what that's saying is at age 40, he needs 2 times the amount of energy as he did at age 20 to make a new cell. And at age 60, he needs 3 times the amount of energy to make a new cell. And in essence, if you were adding it to, it would be 1 time more of this and adding it to. But it comes out to 3 times the amount at age 60, 2 times at 40. So if we were to consider his X factor, where do you think it would be? Well, if 40 is 2 times, then we know that every 2 years he went up half an X. 0.5. So that means if we take 0.5 at 42, he would be 2.1. At 44, 2.2. 46, 2.3. 48, 2.4. 50, 2.5. 52, 2.6. 54, 2.7. 56, 2.8. So he's right in here. 2.5 to 2.7 to 2.8 times more energy to make a new cell. Now, if you read your alphabetical reference manual, you will find that Dr. Reams said, as we get older, we need a lot more hard mineral in the diet. Why? Well, to be able to get this type of energy out of the foods, it's got to be there in the first place. Now, I have an eraser here. Well, let's see. I have two markers here. All right, and this one actually feels like it weighs more. Why? It has more energy in it. Well, the same goes with foods. When we, for example, if you take a piece of steak and you compare that to a piece of, some leafy lettuce, volume size, which is going to have more mineral? The steak. This isn't to say you have to start eating steak as you get older, but you may find that your need for harder foods, such as more nuts, actually more meat, more cheeses, becomes actually a greater need in your life. Or heavier vegetables. Instead of as much leafy vegetables with a lot of phosphates in them, you may need more heavier foods, tomatoes, the root vegetables especially, in your diet. These are things that have to be considered as we get older. So the preparation of the food may not be as refined as we do for like a baby. Obviously you mash it, sometimes blend it up with some water or some milk or something. As we get older, we don't need to do that so much. Of course, the raw food fanatics would say we should eat everything raw, which I think is absurd. I've never found any diet in life where anyone has done well off that. In fact, most raw food people have a lot of problems. A lot of gas too. Okay, so we have a male. He's 55, 5'11", 188 pounds, white, no specific religion, so he's not bothered by any doctrines, or I shouldn't say bothered. He's not bound up with any kind of doctrinal beliefs. He should do well on this program because we can basically tell him whatever, and it's not going to be bothering him. Appliance repair. What does appliance repair tell us? He does physical work. Okay, it may not be the type of work where he's lifting a lot of things, but it could be. He could be on the ground. He could be crawling under cabinets, getting to maybe, I don't know if this was in a factory or not. I'm not exactly sure if this was his own business or not. It may be. And if it is, he could be getting under sinks, doing disposals, working with refrigerators, having to pull them out. So he definitely does some physical work. Keep that in mind. Again, I'm trying to show you how to learn to see the person in all the numbers. Every number counts, even the number, and of course the numbers in the equation. 5'11", 188 pounds. He's in great shape, weight and height-wise. I use this special. I use this website. I'll give it to you. I think I have it here. Yeah, it's right here. http:// Paul's MD /ideal -weight /body.htm. Now there you'll find a very interesting scale, a place where you put in the person's gender, age, height, and weight, and it turns out what most people say would be their ideal weight. Now in this man's case, it gave an ideal weight of 179. All right, that's what was suggested. But there are other weights that are given there, and anything as low as 140 and as high as 184 was given. That was actually the metropolitan. Metropolitan allowed for a small frame 152 to 164, medium frame 160 to 174, and a large frame actually up to 193, 168 to 193. So that would be for their number one. The highest rated insurance. So again, there are variables in this, and this comes into play later on when we learn to calculate reserve energy. You're going to need this information to know how much calcium is in the body and so forth. So, all right, I hope you got this thing. If you didn't get this very easily, or it's a little unclear, just type in in Google, type in ideal body weight or better ideal weight, and that calculator, type in better ideal weight, and it'll come up first. All right. All right. Now I went through his questionnaire also, as that does come first. But let me just bring up a few other things here. His eye numbers, he had quite a few eye numbers. He sent me some very nice the pictures of the eyes. I find this the best system. Have your client send you the pictures. Well, right eye looking up, right eye looking down, right eye looking left, and right eye looking right. That works the best. And then what I do is I have, excuse me, I'm going to show you this. I think I did. You can take your chart like this, and what I do is I took his eyes, the pictures of his eyes, and I just filled in lines. This is laminate, and so I just filled in where that was, and he had some here, and some like here, and then here, let's say. And then you'll often see the colon is, they're always generally going to, in most people, there'll be marks of some sort there. And then, of course, he had some lines coming up this way, and one like that, and one coming down the back of his head, and there like that. And then what I do is after I've drawn them in, I just type in the numbers on his form. And this works outstanding. So even though you don't have this particular chart, and I've been thinking that was one of the things I needed to get you folks, and I'm going to write that down today. I'm going to take this, make a scan of these particular two eye charts right here, and see if I can get that to you, and then I'll scan these two sides as well, which give you the actual numbers to them, and then you'll be able to use them. This is unnecessary, this side of it. All right, so let's see here. Make a note what we need to get you. So, eye charts. The charts you have are fairly good as well, but I'll get you these. And it works nicely because, again, when you laminate it, because then you just draw them in and then you just wipe it off. Probably going to just use the eraser right here. Yep. Or a piece of paper, little alcohol on it, no alcohol, whatever, works just well. And you're off and ready for your next client. Eye numbers, remember, we don't use the eye numbers for anything but to confirm nature is working. And as we get better at plotting, the eye numbers are going to come into better play. I went through his questionnaire now, and there were certain questions that he answered that he had some negatives to. He said he was a little bit forgetful in 17. He said he had some absent-mindedness. He felt he was 5 to 10 pounds overweight. Remember what we said? He's 188. The better ideal weight said 179. So if he lost 9 pounds, that would put him right there. Does he lack stamina? He said sometimes, and he also says, does he have some pain? There's a little bit of pain in the joints. Nothing really bad symptom-wise or anything, but a little bit. Does his head tilt to one side? Yes. This could, again, you want to get somebody like that to a chiropractor. Glasses, all he does is wear reading glasses. Many of us do. The eye doctors say this is normal. I think it's obviously it's energy loss. Off-white teeth, that's going to be very common. Deep pink. Color of gums, very important that some people have pink gums. Are the gums receding a little bit? I'm just going over the ones he answered in the positive too. He had a couple silver fillings removed, and he has the plastic or composites now. Do you have any missing limbs? This was interesting. He's missing, he said, his tail bone. So I'd never heard of that before, and I haven't talked with him about it. But he's going to be watching this as well because he is a student. I never heard of that. Do you have fingernail problems? Split, brittle, rough, soft, ridge. He says yes. So what does that indicate immediately to you? The man needs Min-Call. Get him on the Min-Call and that stuff's going to take care of itself fairly quickly. Or Min 66. Says he has dry skin. What do we talk about with dry skin? Vitamin A issues. Remember, you have an answer sheet for this as well. Use your answer sheet. I'm going by my memory. Do you have trouble after eating raw cabbage or coleslaw? Yes. Why would you have trouble after eating those things? Not a strong enough gastric juice to break it down. Too much gas is being released. It's not a controlled digestion. Therefore, it's going to make you feel gassy. All right. Here are the two very, very important answers here, and I'm going to show you this in the plots. Has your urine lost its force, or is it hard to start or stop? Yes. And do you have to get up at night to urinate? Yes. Keep those in mind. Does he have pain in the lower back, especially after prolonged sitting? Yes. That ties in with the other two we just had. Answers of yes to. You wake up several times in the night? Yes. And he didn't get specific, but I assume it has to do with the having to urinate. He gets about 6 to 7.5 hours of sleep. He does exercise 3 to 5 times a week. He walks. It's good. He has smoked cigarettes. He quit 6 years ago. And how long did he smoke? 12 years on, 14 years off, 9 years on, 6 years off. Doesn't inject insulin, and of course if he did, it would be the end of this consultation. Are you currently using any medications? He uses something called Ambien to sleep. Okay? And he's taking some vitamin C, E, biotin, and zinc. Eats breakfast, cooked and raw vegetables. He has a very good lifestyle. Cooked and raw vegetables, meat and soup at night, Cooked and raw vegetables, hot dogs, and chicken in lunchtime. So what we got to do is, if he's going to keep eating hot dogs, make sure that those are beef or turkey dogs, and we're going to want to get him off the meat at night, so his body chemistry can relax a little bit more at night. Also, what else? Snacks does he eat? Potato chips. You know, if we could get him to use some other types of chips, like more the corn type, the non-GMO, if you can find them. I think that you can find them. That would be better.
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato chips, yeah, those are awesome. So that would be that. But, you know, generally, as I look at this, we're not seeing someone who's wild and crazy. He's got a pretty good lifestyle. Does he ever crave any foods? And I bet a lot of us can say yes to these foods. Cookies, cake, and ice cream. So he likes the sweets. All right. Now I'm going to give you his numbers, and then I'm going to show you some pictures, drawings, and explain them to you. And then we'll go over what we'd want to do for this fellow. His numbers are... By the way, I used his 6 o'clock numbers. I believe that's what I used. Yes. He gave me numbers from noontime, 12 o'clock. He gave me 6:15, and he gave me 2200, 10 o'clock at night. I used the 6 o'clock numbers. I could have averaged them. That's another thing we can do, but when I plot, I like to use the set of numbers exactly that I'm plotting, because averaging can cause some variations there that may not be right. All right, so we have a Brix of a 4.0. What's that tell you immediately? Zone of misery, right? 7.2 is his, I'm going to do the pHs like this. I'll set them up and down. Is his urine pH, and 6.5 is the saliva. Remember the other way we would do this on the computer? It's going to be like this. His average pH came out to 6.73. You want to remember that number as well. 21.8 salts. This is telling. 1, 2, 3 pluses. And a 10/8, but again, if we do it on the computer, it would be 10/8 like that. And then, of course, you would have your total urea, which would be 18. Not too bad, actually. He does drink a lot of water. That was one of the things. Yeah, let me give you some information here also that he gave me. He has had his tonsils and adenoids out. Well, he had surgery twice on tonsils and adenoids. I didn't realize you could get your tonsils and adenoids twice. And ear tubes in the left ear 6 or 8 times. He drinks right now about 70 to 100 ounces of filtered water, recently switched to distill or reverse osmosis. The RO water has a parts per million of approximately 15. All right. Now, considering the amount of water he's drinking, and you look at these numbers, you can imagine where these numbers very likely were before he was drinking. They were very likely very, very high out, very, very far out. Once you start drinking 70 to 100 ounces of water a day, everything's going, these are going to come down. These are going to come down. These might actually start go up, especially this top number. So keep that in mind, where the numbers may have been at one time, and just how serious the energy loss could be when I show you these pictures, which I will show you right now. This, tell me how you, should I come forward with it? Would that be easier?
On the board there.
On the board is better, but will the is this okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is the sugar number plot. Now I can't get into how I do all this right now, but let me just tell you that this information will eventually be either provided or it will be provided in a software format, so you can send in your numbers and get them plotted. Note that these lines running through his... First of all, let me explain something. Time for my lemon. Let's consider this body. This man is standing in what would be a cylinder. If you're looking at this, if I could make this three-dimensional, he would be standing with a cylinder around him. From the wall of that cylinder to his navel, at all angles, all points, are from here, from the head down to the navel, and from the feet up to the navel and working inward, are the numbers. Going from perfect to furthest from perfect at the navel. So for example, if his numbers were perfect, the numbers would all be circling around him perfectly. There would not be no line would come in towards his body. Okay? Now we have to keep in mind that this circular, what Dr. Eames called relative math presentation, is working left to right, up and down, and front and back. Therefore, every number, when it is plotted, has to be considered in a three-dimensional format. Therefore, with perfect numbers, it would just be going around his body. What happens though when the numbers, for example, are not perfect, the sugars drop, the sugars are up here, so we have a 4 sugar here, and it's going to end up being plotted against another formula, which takes me a little time to explain it to you, which I'll hold off now for now. And it is showing you the deviation and how that sugar is, the resistance of that sugar is being followed. Remember, it would normally be on the outside. Now remember, Dr. Beddoes uses the expression light congealed is what forms matter. Matter is light congealed. We are matter. We are light congealed into a frequency which, because of that particular frequency, it literally draws in the minerals and puts them on that frequency to form our shapes, our colors, the height, our whole being. So when we have perfect health, light congealed, the full power of God, as far as the physicality, according to his laws, not something miraculous that happens, but the physicality is all the way out. And this so-called, I believe it's called, the New Agers call it the aura, and we just call it the energy, I would call it the soul, is emanating outside and around the body. Now, when we use too much energy so that we do not replace a cell or group of cells fast enough. Remember I explained what delta cells do, the delta cell does. It starts to expand. In the lung it dehydrates. We'll talk about that later when we get more into anatomy. But it begins to expand. When it expands, it puts pressure on the cells around it. What do you think will happen to the energy flow at that point? Well, it's going to cause a resistance at that point, and so as this energy is trying to get out, it's going to deflect. And now we're going to cause a different deflection wave, and it's going to be it won't be perfect anymore. And when you get this deflection wave, this can be graphed like this is, and the lines connected to show where that energy loss is occurring and what points of the body that energy loss is affecting. Eventually, once we get in complete understanding, because I'm only showing you how to plot, I'm showing you the plotting of the urine and saliva numbers here, and we do not use the albumin in this. We only use the sugar. Well, we use the sugars, pHs, salts, and the ureas. So you have 6 total plots here. And I'm going to show you the 6. Just from a quick perspective, where you see these lines plotting, what do you see the issue with? And I'm going to just mention 2. You see this issue right here. He's coming down the right side and into the intestinal area, the liver area right to the right, up in this area, as well as coming down to the descending colon in this area and the rectum area, the sigmoid colon area. You also see with this particular line of energy, the cationic line of energy, going right through his sexual area, reproductive gland, and right on up this way. Keep this right here in mind. You also have this coming across under his lips this way. I don't remember him saying too much about it, other than it's possible that if I'm slightly off, this could have some effect having to do, remember, we have to think of this in 3 dimensions. This could have some effect having to do with his tonsils being in the back here, through the throat. We have to think of this like a slice. This is a slice, like a circle almost, like a circle slicing through his neck there. So that was your sugar number. Remember he said his adenoids and his tonsils? Well, let's take a look at this. Now remember, when I plotted this, I hadn't even looked at his questionnaire yet. So this is the kind of things you start to see before. This is going right up where the adenoids are, right across the nose area. Also, we have another line right here. This is this urine pH dropping down, same area. A little closer to the navel this time, but still hitting over in this area of the colon, which comes dropping down into this area, down the descending colon. And look at this particular line here. This line going right on more to the right side, at the lower part of his scrotum, and coming up this way. Remember what he said. He's lost his force of urine. And he's constantly has to urinate. He's losing that control down there. And think of his age as well. His age is 55. And think of what is the highest cancer rate in men today. I believe it is prostate cancer first, and then what follow, I think it's colon cancer second. Of course, then you have the heart disease, lung cancer, and so forth. That was the urine pH. This is his saliva pH, folks. The cationic side, the anionic side. This plot's going, again, both of them, right through this area of his body. It's not only in the scrotum area, but it's, remember, again, this is a slice. This is a circle, slicing through. Think about where his prostate gland is. Take out your anatomy book, one of the flip pages, or just go online, use your pictures, and you can get more stuff online. You never have to buy a thing again. Everything's there for you. And it seems like everybody wants you to look at them and use them. So you can tell that this is the problem. Again, remember what he said. This is confirming what we're seeing here. This is why we ask the questions. It tells us something of how far things are along. When we get to the point where we can calculate reserve energy, we won't need that. Or calculate the energy loss in that area. That was the saliva. Here are his salts. Both numbers. I mean, both plots. Right here again. So you're getting a picture. The problem seems more over to this side a little bit. Just slightly. But again, the area, the great loss of mineral here is manganese. And it makes sense because you need more manganese in your sexual organs than anywhere else. The breast would come into play for females, much more than males as well. So you see again, right here. We're not finished yet. We come to the ureas. What do the ureas contain? What are they telling us in the ureas? The ureas tell us about the core energy, the core that makes up the cell. This is what's being thrown out. This is your anionic urea, anionic energy. Again, the cellular load that is coming out in this gentleman is coming out from this area again. And also here, showing that his liver is affected as well. So, you have, we could get into the I numbers too. I'd have to take a look exactly which I numbers are out. That would confirm this. In fact, we'll do that in a second. That would confirm the problems here and elsewhere. And it would tell us whether his body is cooperating or not. When you have plots, especially this many in one area, and you have no I numbers confirming that, that's a real problem. That means nature is giving up. Nature's not trying anymore. That was your NO3. And here, finally, is the NH4. And again, you have the same type plot showing up here. This time over on this side, but generally in this area, descending colon, and also in this area right here in the liver. So there could be troubles along other places along this line of resistance, but they may not be so extensive as to him feeling any symptoms.
The joints.
Yeah, there could be some problems. He mentioned something in his joints. Notice that we got a little bit over the knee here, the right knee, a little bit in the elbow here, his wrist.
And the shoulder.
And his shoulder. Remember, when your colon requires oil, and you don't give it oil, it's going to get its oil, and it's going to go right to the joints and take it from there. That's why people, arthritics generally, a lot of times will have very high pHs. And take a look at his pH right here. Oops, made a mess of myself here, but you see that his pH is high. He'll also have higher salts. Remember, he said he wasn't drinking that much water. These numbers could have been high before. They could have been acid, but they could have also been high. Now, but with this salt, the salt is also going to be drying out his joints terribly because there's a tremendous amount of energy. It's very much like what it does to the joints, like too much salt in the soil does. Dries out the roots. And then all kinds of so-called disease pops in, and of course they're blaming the fertilizer companies coming in blaming it on the disease. People say, whoa, what are you doing here? Are you telling me he's got prostate cancer? No, I'm not saying that. We do not diagnose here. All we're doing is measuring energy
Loss.
Energy loss exceeding the perfect numbers, and we're plotting the line of resistance. Let me just explain that a little bit further. Remember, we said energy's flowing out from our body, it's flowing from the inside out. So what happens is, as the energy flows, as long as the flow of energy is clean, it will not hit anything. It'll be a circle completely around the body. If you look at Dr. Beto's book, you'll see he has this most interesting picture, a really cool picture. And he's showing you anionic and the cationic spins of energy. This is very much what I was just doing with the plotting there. I was taking these lines here, and these numbers have a lot to do with the graph you just saw. I was taking these lines, and what happens is wherever the point of resistance, the energy weakness was found, it's almost like it ricochets off that area.
Deviates.
It can't flow through the area, so it has to go around. It still wants to get back out here, where it's supposed to be and complete its circuit, but it's not going to complete it in the direction that we wanted it, that it should complete it in, because there's a loss there. And so in his case, the loss was in the prostate, sexual organ area, and what has happened is that it causes the line of resistance, causes that line, instead of flowing smoothly around up to the top, it jerks it over this way or that way. And therefore, often what you'll find is people that have a problem in one part of the body, if you follow that line of energy, it'll show up in those other parts of the body. Reflexologists experience this all the time when they work on people's feet. They'll find, let's say they have a problem with the hip, they're going to find problems with the shoulder too. I have a bad hip. It's been there since as far back as I can remember. I also have a bad shoulder. And the hip and the shoulder, they're going to cross over, because once you come from the navel, here you go flip-flop like this way. So I got bad right hip, bad left shoulder. My left shoulder's been dislocated. It's been a long time since it came out, but it still is very weak, and it's just not something that I'll ever use strongly again for anything, because there's too much scar tissue in there. So again, when we mess up one part of the body, we cause energy resistance points, and that's what all this plotting is about. Now, what if you don't injure the body? Like I said, when cells that are this big, let's make 7 of them, suddenly become this big, this is kind of exaggerated, but the energy flow that was going around, say like this, suddenly has to go like this. And that causes it to maybe go there instead of where it was supposed to be there. You see what I'm saying? I know it's not an exact description perfectly, but if we can get the concept of
Deviation.
what deviation, the plotting is, all the plotting is doing is showing you where the energy got knocked off. Eventually, now, every mineral has a perfect flow of energy through the body. You can literally plot all 84 minerals and their line of curvature through the body. And any time that you plot the urine and saliva numbers and they hit those lines of energy, then there will be deficiencies there. For example, when I plot manganese for this gentleman, it's going to show up. I know it goes over in that area. It's going to show a deficiency of manganese. But we know that by the urine and saliva numbers, but we're going to see that as well with the manganese plot. We're going to also see, I saw a beryllium problem. Beryllium, why would he have beryllium problems? What area of the body has a lot of beryllium in it? The sinuses. So, we need to get more beryllium in his body as well. So we're going to concentrate on the manganese foods, the beryllium foods, and we're also going to concentrate on a few other things as well. This is how plotting can help us. It can make us more focused in the foods and the supplements we use. I have another gentleman out west. Another gentleman, I shouldn't really disclose his location, but let's just say he's a client, not a student. I'm working with him. Very much similar numbers to this gentleman, but he's older. And he himself has these same issues. Lost the force of urination. And his plots, almost all of them run right over there. Now, what I did with him is I put him on a very high manganese diet. Of course, we get his numbers right. We have to make, I just erased numbers, sorry. They were 4.0, 7.2, 6.5, 21.8, C, 4M, plus, and 10 over 8. Yes. Do I have a photographic memory? No, but it's close. I put him on a diet to get his numbers right in the range that they're supposed to be, and that's what we're going to talk about right now with this gentleman. And then I focus on the foods that those original numbers he gave me tell me he needs. Because even if we give him a diet and we bring these to 1 to 2, and that's what we want to do. We bring this to 6.8. We bring these down to 6.2 to 6.8, and he's already okay in the saliva. But let me ask you something. Is that saliva 6.5 super strong? Is it?
It's going on the weak side. It's going on the...
That's a 6.5. He's just slightly over 6.4. But remember what I said about the teeter-totter effect? You can have you could have equal amounts on each side of that teeter-totter, and yet that teeter-totter have hardly any weight on each side. And it's the same way with the saliva pH. He also said he has problems with cabbage and other foods like that. His gastric juice actually is weak. So let's say his liver needed, with a 6.4, it's 54% cationic and 46% anionic to have a 6.4 pH. Let's say that the total number needed to be 1,000 millhouse units of energy, right? Well, with a 6.5, he would have a little bit more this way. Let's say the percentages was more like 52% and 48%. And yet, what if he only had a total of 500 millhouse units of energy? You can have a 6.5 pH with 500. And he would have so much percentage on the cationic side and so much percentage on the anionic side. But he needs 1,000. He needs all of them to keep that pH strong. So you can have, as I explained in my pH lesson, pH is only a measure of resistance. It has nothing to do with quantity. Only the way you tell the quantity or the quality of the pH is much in these numbers. All these other numbers. When the pH is not, when this is not a strong gastric juice, these numbers are all going to be off because he's not getting the mineral to replace the cells in all the rest of his body. And that's why his pancreas is having trouble, his liver is having trouble, he's got some cholesterol buildup in his body. Look at all the delta cells, and at this age, probably some omega cells already in his body. And then, of course, the ureas are up, too, putting pressure on his heart. It's, again, all the numbers, they fall right into place, and do not get trapped into believing that just because a pH looks good, that it's good. I showed you that example. This lady, 1.6, 6.3, 6.3, 8C, 4M double plus, 7/5, dead. 5 weeks later. These look like pretty good numbers to me. If you can read them.
4M plus plus.
That, and this being so low, and a history that I had that I did send everybody. If you haven't gotten it, let me know. That history showed her numbers never moved. All right, let's put his numbers back up again. What are we going to do? What would you do with this man? Well, first of all, we got to get him on a steady drinking program, okay? By the way, this is what I'm beginning to do with all my clients. I take their plots and I put them in their diet booklet so they can see where these plot lines are. And then later on, maybe 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, we'll replot the numbers again. And then we'll see where these plots are afterwards. And we can also compare it to the questionnaire. See how wonderful this program can be? Why aren't people need to be beating the doors down? All right, and that's another thing I want to talk to you about. Remind me, is that let's get you folks certified to test. All right. So what is the first thing we do with a person? Remember we talked about it. We're going to want to put him on the lemon water. He's okay now. He's done enough to get himself on the lemon water. Why? because I got 3 sets of numbers on them. Oh, let me show you the other sets. This is a nice thing too when someone sends me 3 sets of numbers, because it tells me this isn't a fluke. This is not a fluke of what he sent me. His other numbers were before and after. He had 4.3, 6.6, 6.5. See, again, this is why I warn you about the pH. A lot of people are going to see this. They're going to think he's fine. This is why he feels good, by the way. Feels pretty good because his pHs are that good. Or that close. Just draw a line up top here, separate that. He's got a 24.8 C, 4M plus, and then a 12/10. And then the later one, oh yeah, let me just give you the times here. This was 1200, this was 1800, and this was 2200. And that's going to be 1.4, 7.2, 6.5, see how 4M. Oops. 7.3 C, 3/5.
That's a withdrawal going in.
My wife has given me my teaching answer. That is a withdrawal. See why I ask for 3 tests, folks? People say, oh, you always ask for 3. Why are you so... Well, number one, what if he'd only given me this set? I can't do anything with that.
It tells you he is responding, though.
It does say he is responding to the program, yes. This is nice because we're seeing that as he slows down at night, his body goes into rest mode, he starts to respond to the program. As his numbers fall in, he's going into a withdrawal. This is a lot of the fluids is helping him already. But again, this...
Chemistry change.
Yeah, going through a chemistry change, which is what a withdrawal is. And what is a chemistry change? Changing from one range to another. We'll get into the ranges too, that as they tie into this plotting. It all ties in together so beautifully. You folks, you've come to the best class. This is going hands down. I don't mean to brag, but when people out there say they see pictures in the numbers, tell them to show you some pictures in the numbers. Have them prove it. Have them draw a picture out in the numbers. So, here we see him going into withdrawal here. We see why it was a good idea to do the 3 tests, because had he come with me with this, and just let's say these 2, well, I would have had a good one here to work with in the morning. But I was happy to see the 6 o'clock numbers, because see, he's very consistent. Notice how well he's doing with what he's doing. He is drinking his fluids pretty well. This, you know, he's a little bit high in the morning at 12 noon. I'm not sure what time he got up. I should have, let's see, he would tell you what time he got up. 7 to 8 a.m. His breakfast time is 9 to 10 a.m. So, you know, we don't know what time he started with his fluids. His supper time is 7 to 8 p.m. And that also may have something to do with the withdrawal as well. So, it's you get a real beautiful picture with this, and if you want, you can. You have to strike this one out. You wouldn't be able to do an average, but you could average these together to also help you in your dietary planning, just to get an idea where things are. Remember, we said his average pH was well, here obviously it's going to be about what, a 6.58, something like that, or 5.6. And but down on the actual number that I did, he actually put his average pHs here. Actually, it was 6.53, the top one, and the other 2 were 6.73. So you know that, well, no vitamin D for this gentleman, and of course this would all tell you that as well. If anything, you can afford to give him some vitamin C. Now, he's already taken vitamin C. I have to find out how much he is taking, because I want him to keep doing that. He's already on E. He takes biotin. I've never used it before. He takes zinc. Dr. Ream says we get most of it from the air. He does take some magnesium. You know, all of these things are actually good for him, because the magnesium is not affecting him that badly. He doesn't have a potassium problem, and he does need the magnesium to help lower these ureas. But let's also remember that once his salts get down, all right, These ureas are also going to come down. Therefore, he may begin to show a slight potassium problem. Very slight. And he mentioned some of that as being in the, had a little bit of short-term memory. Not much. And that could have to do with the sugars as well. Let's talk of one other thing. In his comments, he mentioned that his back hurt after a lot of sitting. Lower back pain, of course, can come from several things. But the plots that we said in the prostate area and the reproductive area, that definitely can cause pain in the lower back. One of the reasons that they find so-called cancer cells in the spinal area from people that have, excuse me for a minute. Means I have a half hour left, so I'm going to finish up on this.
People that have what?
People that have had prostate cancer, one of the things the doctors are always worried of is that it's going to spread to the spine. Well, consider, especially the lower spine, considering where the prostate is located and the lower spine is, it's right there. I mean, they're right in front of it. So what happens is these omega cells will eventually turn loose, and being in such close proximity, they can end up ending up over into the spinal area. Now, the doctors will say that the reason the spine broke down is that those cancer cells spread there and started causing that problem. We disagree. Again, it's an energy issue. We're seeing energy being lost in various places at that point. Will they cause trouble? Yeah, they'll cause trouble, but that's not the reason for the spinal area breaking down. Okay, what are we going to do with this gentleman? Well, I would put him on, it's 188, so let's take 190, divide that by 2 equals 95, and we're going to divide 95 by 30. I would just bring it over to 210. I would give him 3 ounces of water and 3 ounces of water, 3 ounces of lemon water. I would have him sweeten it just barely, just slightly, and have him drink 30 of those per day. Now, that's your first step. Remember, we do the 30 drinks a day. Why do we do the 30 drinks? He's having trouble urinating as it is. Last thing we want to do is have this man go to bed with a bladder filled with fluid. Give him small amounts. He'll use up most of his fluids during the day. He'll get just enough to lower these numbers down. We'll start off with the 3 ounces. If he needs more, we'll add more. If he needs less, we'll lower it down. The other thing that I would always want to do with somebody where I know that there are delta cells and possibly omega cells is you always want to put them on Jason Winters tea.
Original.
Original. Now the Winters folks tell us that the replacement of chaparral with Indian sage is just as good. Again, I can't say yes or no to that. All I can say is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like to use the original if at all possible. And of course that means you're going to have, what is it? It's red clover, gotu kola, and chaparral. And is the red clover, I think it's 70%, gotu kola is 25%, and chaparral is 5%. You can in his case, I would start with that, but if he stays up above in the alkaline area, you could actually increase the chaparral and maybe lower the gotu kola a little bit, or just add more chaparral to it to increase the, this is going to tend to cause more of a cationic reaction. So you have to be a little careful with it. I would eventually want to I would probably get him started on lemonade, and we might even do Jason Winter's tea right off the bat. But if you wanted to test and see how well the sweetener works with him, see how well he can comply with just lemon water and water or slightly juice, diluted juice, you could do that for a few weeks. But definitely, this would be a consideration that I would probably strongly consider doing right off.
They don't make the original formula here.
Right, original formula. The only way we were thinking of making it right now, we're unable to do so just at this point. You can make it yourself. Companies to get your tea from, to get your chaparral, your ingredients from, would be Western Botanicals. Again, just look these up on the internet. They come right up. Western Botanicals. What's the other one? Bouncing Bear. And don't be offended that they're somewhat new agey, that they
Penherb.
that they have probably a different mindset than a lot of us do. We just want the
And
product.
Frontier herb.
Frontier herb.
Those are the major ones.
The most powerful combination you can use in your Reams programs for most people is lemon water and Jason Winter's tea. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
With distilled water. Made with distilled water.
Only using distilled water. This gentleman mentioned he was using RO. Remember, I don't know if I talked about, I think we did early on in the class, distilled water is...
Steam distilled.
Steam distilled water is resurrected water. It has water, it has been boiled. The anions and cations have been broken, the ions have been broken down into, or all the ions have gone from cations to anions, they've gone up, and then they've been assembled back together again as it's condensed.
Causes the base exchange.
Yeah, hold on.
Sorry.
The ppm, I know that's important to a lot of people, the parts per million, and that's fine, but there is the extra event that occurs through distillation that does not happen through any filtering process. I can't explain it totally, but it picks up a lot of energy when it does so. And so only distilled water should be used. I would also emphasize in his diet, of course you're gonna work, we've already taught you how to use the calcium foods, so what are you going to do? You're going to emphasize the gypsum foods. You're going to have at least 50, probably 60% will come from phosphate, gypsum, dolomite, food, and gluconate foods. 60%. And then you would want to use about 40% from your oxide and carbonate calciums. So you got the list, it's in the diet booklet. Now, there is another list. This is what I've been working on, trying to finish this up, and I do apologize, but there's so much information to go through, and I'm not going to get that much. It's spread out, but it's important that I do get this to you. We're going to have, I thought I printed them out. We want to give you the manganese foods that he's going to need. Right here. What manganese foods will he need? What are the foods that are really important besides the calcium foods? Okay, the manganese foods are going to be, and manganese is going to be foods that have seeds in them. Cranberries, absolutely number one. He must have cranberry juice every day. Dr. Ream's Light Ocean Spray, we've used others. Choose the one you think works best.
There's
I don't know what to say
organic
anymore.
with concentrate, no sugar added. There's different ones.
Other manganese foods. Anything with C. Okay, avocado. Although in this gentleman's case, remember avocado is calcium oxide, I believe. So if you use too much of that, you're going to end up driving this pH higher. We don't want to do that too much, but a little bit of avocado. Remember how big that seed is in there. Tremendously high in manganese. Your peppers. Remember, peppers have seeds in them. They're edible. Cucumbers. Any of your seeds. It's just like eating pure manganese. Sunflower seeds. Pumpkin seeds. Corn. Squash. Oh, big one. Okra. Huge, 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 huge for manganese. Beans. Reams loves green beans. Snap peas. Again, notice. Snow peas. Snap and snow. All these are rich manganese foods. Oatmeal. Oats. Oats. Wheat. Anything. They're seeds. The seed is within itself. God said we're supposed to eat the foods and have the seed within themselves. Why? Do you realize without manganese, low amounts of manganese, you can't bear children?
Must be organic to have the seed within itself these days.
Right. Going to have a problem with GMO stuff and all the hybrids that are out there where they're cutting out the seeds. You want to say no to that stuff.
Get organic.
Organic will do it. I'm not saying organic is better as far as bricks is concerned,
It'll have the seed.
but it will have the seeds, yeah. Here's other ones he lists. I'm not going to write them, but listen. Grits is excellent. Again, watch the GMO. Peanuts, boiled peanuts especially. Millet. Let's see. Radishes are excellent, supposedly raw. The small green pod up to 3 inches long is an excellent food to eat raw. Bell peppers, the seeds in there, rich in manganese. He says celery, raw celery is excellent. Easy to digest, breaks down easily. That'd be good for this gentleman's heart as well. We want to get him on asparagus as well because his heart has been under some pressure. So he's lost energy in his heart. We want to build that up. Oh, there's a fruit out there called pomegranate. If you get that and mix that with cranberry juice or go back and forth cranberry juice every day, maybe have pomegranate for lunch and cranberry at night or whatever, excellent. Eggplant is rich in manganese. And that gives you a pretty good idea. Anything with seeds, okay? Anything with seeds is going to be your rich manganese foods. Even grapes have a lot of manganese in, a lot of manganese. Get the idea? See what happens when we start learning to plot, we get all this more information, then we start to focus. Should you use a manganese supplement? Okay, I started doing that with this gentleman out west that I've been working with for a while. One person I'm working with, several. He's older, and I felt I needed to give him a little bit more oomph in his diet. So we're trying it. Different kinds. Using manganese gluconate, manganese phosphate, another type of manganese. Told him to use different kinds.
Watch the numbers.
Watch the numbers. Remember, the most important thing is we have to get the ionization chamber, the fluids, correct. That means bringing those numbers into the restoration range. How do you bring them into the restoration range the fastest? You use the fluids. Okay? Get the fluids right and use the tea and the lemon together. Those numbers are going to come right where they're supposed to be pretty well. It doesn't mean you've restored everything, but once that ionization chamber, that ionization fluid is filled, then all you're doing is providing the food, liver's breaking, the gastric juice is breaking it down, putting all those minerals into that ionization fluid, the blood, coming back around to the liver, and then the liver starts to put it back together and sends it off. The liver sends that cell off about 60 to 80% complete, and by the time it gets to the transformer gland, it'll pass through the gland, and it would be in the gland, okay? In this gland in here, where this cell is passing through, the energy will be given to it, taken away from it, and the whole thing, and all the extra minerals will be added to it, so that this 80% goes to 100%, and then it will be ionized on the end of a new stole that'll be built on a stole made of carbon. And then boop, boop, boop,
Exchanged.
and the old cell will be pushed off, literally pushed out of place. And believe it or not, as this one's going on and this cell is ionizing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it is going to pull energy back to it from this cell, according to Dr. Reams, to finish the job. It will take as much energy as it can from the old cell to finish the job. The body is very efficient the way it works. So all we need to do is give it what it needs. God made it to work. God wants His light to shine through. God wants that light to be congealed out into a perfect presentation of His creation. All right, I got a few minutes to get into the theory. If you have questions, please send them in. We're going to go over a problem every week. If I have to pull them out from old stuff, we'll do that. But if you send your new stuff in, you know, you might be able to even help somebody on the way if you want. No charge. Okay. I think this stuff is so cool, folks. It's been a tight year. I've seen less interest this year, and it really it hurts because, well, you just have so much to give. I have so much to give, and I'm offering it at such a good price. People don't know how much money I pay for my courses. Much, much more than what folks are paying for this. It's not even close. And because I really love to teach it. And I believe if people could understand what disease is, what energy is and all that, they would no longer live in fear. I've heard people say that the thing they fear the most is getting cancer. How terrible to live life that way. This just frees you. All right, you're going to get some excellent attachments in here. You're going to get something called the New Chemic Theories Closing Papers by Dr. W.C. Bailey, where it talks about anions and cations in there. The one source we have that talks about it in the way we teach it, way back in the 1900s. All right, in this, I'm going to hold up some of these pages because, just so you see, this will be the lesson you'll be getting. We're going to be talking about God and energy, as I talked a little bit about. I'll give you some quotes from Dr. Manthe. First of all, we talk about what a theory actually is, why we have to call this the biological theory of ionization, and why it's called the Reams biological theory of ionization. You read that. Basically, I'll give you a quick definition. A theory is a logically self-consistent model or framework for describing the behavior of a related set of natural or social phenomena. It originates from or is supported by experimental evidence. In this sense, a theory is a systematic and formalized expression of all previous observations. It's predictive, it's logical, and it's testable. In principle, scientific theories are always tentative and subject to corrections or inclusion in a yet wider theory. Well, we have the basis here, and we're always proving it, and I can't find anything wrong in it, but we are finding things that we can improve, just like the fluids program. That's an improvement I think I've made to this. I start off early on in this lesson. I want to get us back to where it all began. God. I watched a recent debate between Ken Hovind and a professor who was willing to try evolution against Ken Hovind's creationism debate. Oh my goodness. It was such a slaughter. I felt sorry for the evolution guy. I mean, they have nothing. It's so silly. The whole thing is absurd. Anyway, we get back to God. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And what I point out here, of Him and through Him and to Him are all things. That is, this passage in Romans 11:36 opened my mind up to the concept of all things being created not only by, but that they were created by God out of Himself. I don't believe in pantheism, that everything is God, but it all came out from God. And He holds it together. He holds all things together by the word of His power. By Him all things consist, the Scripture says. Take God out of the picture, poof, we're gone too. It's impossible. You know, the only thing that's impossible for God is nothing. For with God, nothing shall be impossible. Only nothing is impossible for God. That means there's always something, because there's always God. He's there, everywhere. Woo! It's cool stuff. He's before all things, by Him all things consist. Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, said Solomon. Who being the brightness of His glory and the expressed image of His person, speaking of Jesus, and upholding all things by the word of His power. Alright. This then is the message which we have heard of Him and declare unto you, that God is light, and in Him is no darkness at all. Light, energy. For our God is a consuming fire, energy. And if you keep reading if you read your Bible, more and more and more, this concept of energy comes through. As the body without the spirit is dead. What's the spirit then? What does a body have? Electricity. And what is matter? Matter is electricity. Plus heat. And so when a bomb, call it uranium, whatever they're using nowadays, releases all of its energy, it does so how? In a split second, all this electricity and all this heat energy releases. One of my students had to make a deal out of it early on, trying to tell me that, well, it doesn't all release. Okay, so there's a little left over. Maybe a little bit of matter left over. Maybe a little bit of ash left over. But it's incredible how much of that energy is released. Electricity and heat, and then just devastating everything in its path. Now, what are we? We are also matter. And we are going through this process every day, except, and thank God for that, much more slowly. We are also matter. Breaking down anion by anion. But it's slow. It's slow. It's not everything at once. It's slow. And hopefully, all these that are coming in, going out, are being replaced. As these are going out, new ones are coming in. In Dr. Beddoes' book, you will find this little chart. You'll find this in chapter on frequency principles, chapter 2. You've seen this frequency table, all right? Now, as we said, God, and out of God, you have energy. And this is how it was described, that God took the energy and divided it up according to the Rehn's biological theory of ionization. He made anions and He made cations. But those were made up also of energy particles. And we are told that these are called Milhouse units of energy. Some people would like to try and compare them with joules of energy, Joules. I think the concept is somewhat the same, millhouse units of energy. In vain have we searched for this man. I believe he's out there. Dr. Reams said his name was in the books quite a bit in his day. I've searched and searched. Do you want a project? Start searching for Mr. Millhouse. He would probably be some kind of chemistry, but he's never referred to by Reams as doctor. He's always referred to as Mr. And Dr. Reams spent a lot of time in the University of Florida, or is it Florida State? One of those two universities where he spent lots of time. He told Dr. Scow he'd love to take them down there and show them the library that he used to put together his own work that he pulled information from. Okay, anyway, energy. In an anion, there's 1 to 499 MUE, Millhouse units of energy. Anions make cations. Why? Well, when an anion is pulling all this energy in, once it reaches 500 Millhouse units of energy, okay, and this anion, by the way, and we've discussed this before, but the anion has a positive core and has a negative shell. Once the total Millhouse units of energy in this negative shell here go to 500, okay, then it becomes a cation. This literally flips inside out almost. So what you have then is a cation with 500 in the core, and then at that point it will have 499 in the core, 1 to 499 in the core, and then 500 to 999 outside. So cations are made up of anions. An anion can have 1 to 499 Millhouse units of energy. A cation can have 500 to 999 Millhouse units of energy. We're going to get to this frequency table in a minute after I get through this. Anions and cations. Each element is going to have either an anion in the core or a cation in the core, and have an anion or a cation in the shell, or more. But it's never equal, according to as conventional science teaches. There are not equal protons and electrons. One and multiple. One in the middle and multiple on the outside. Or it can be 1 and 1 too. The one element that is equal is the simplest of all elements. It's the one which science bases everything on these days. It has one anion in the core and one cation in the shell, or it has one anion in the shell and one cation in the core. In either case, the Millhouse units of energy would be the same. It won't change at all, because you're going to have anywhere from 1 to 499 in the anion and 500 to 999 in the cation. This is what, also hydrogen is what you call an isotope. It can be either or. Dr. Reams called them isotopes. Dr. Beto is now convinced the name should be isomer. Dr. Manthe felt isomer was the right term. This is the Reams terminology. That will not agree with conventional use of that term. But I'm not here to teach conventional science. I'm teaching the RBTI. If you want to learn conventional science, get a book and learn on that. Because it's just too much to get into all the valences and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so we have anions and cations that are the source of an atom, and these atoms will make up different elements. All right. So let's go to this frequency table. So we had the anions and the cations. And so let's look at, if you look in here, you'll find Dr. Beddoes' chart. Periodic table of the elements. What you'll see, this is a very simplified chart. I like the more technical ones a little bit, but he does give you actually the atomic weights of these elements. In our system of measuring the number of electrons in orbit, and remember when we say electrons, we mean either an anion or cations out in orbit. So I'm going to take, if you look at this periodic table of the elements, and I'll send you that as well. Where'd my list go? Sure, I send you all this stuff so I don't forget. Oh, here we go. Take care of that, please. Thank you. Thank you. High charts. Oh yeah. Periodic table. Okay. If you look at the periodic table, when now I have all this set up for you, and I will send you the listing, the SCOW listing. I think it actually comes with this lesson of the number of anions and cations that make up each mineral. But for example, when you look at helium, for example, Dr. Beddoes has a 4.0 in the corner. Well, what that means is that there are 4 electrons in orbit. If there are 4 electrons, now again, are they anions or are they cations? In this case, helium, very much like hydrogen, is an isotope or an isomer. So that means it could be 4.0, it could be 4 anions in orbit or 4 cations in orbit. And if it's 4 anions, the core will be 1 cation. And if it's 4 cations, the core will be 1 anion. Let's take lithium, which is number 3 on the chart. It has a number in the corner there of 6.9, an atomic weight of 6.9. If you look at your more detailed atomic charts, they might have more numbers after in the decimal. Well, generally speaking, when you get like a 6.9, 6.89, 6.93, you're going to round up. So lithium ends up weighing 7. And that 7 means that there are 7 ions in orbit. And in the case of lithium, lithium is always a cation. So there will be 1 anion in the core, and that can have 1 to 499 millhouse units of energy. And then there will be 7 cations in the shell, which can have 500 to 999 millhouse units of energy. So, if you can get that basic understanding here, that's how we build atoms, build the atoms of each element. Now, there are 3 elements that are always anionic, and those are calcium. Chlorine comes before that on the chart, and actually potassium comes next. And the numbers for those are, chlorine I think is 36, is it 30? 35. 35 anions, potassium has 39, and calcium has 40.
Is that good to memorize?
Very important to memorize these 3, always anions. Always. Never, ever are they anything else. They're always anions. This is why calcium is so important in our body. It resists the cationic flow of energy. If we don't have enough of it, the electricity flows to our body and just rips us to pieces. there are 4 elements that can be either anionic or cationic. Again, the isotope. I'm going to use Reams's terminology. I just feel that I want to do him the honor, but I will bring in what the others have said. This is Beto. This is Beto and Manthi. There are 4 that can be either or, and they are, again, hydrogen, and it has a number of 1. We just showed you that. There's helium, and it has a number of 4. There is nitrogen. Its number is 14. And then you have oxygen, which is 16. So these 4 elements can be either anionic or cationic depending on the line of least resistance. They are going to follow the line of least resistance. If they're being pulled upward, you know they're going to go anionic, and they're going to go the inside. If they're cationic at the time and they're being pulled in that direction, it's going to flip inside out, and you're going to end up with an anionic hydrogen. This is what happens in our continual water flow system. All right, you have a cloud. Sorry, Lord, I don't mean to get rid of your name here. But let's say you have a cloud and you have a lake. The water is H2O. The cloud is H2O. The steam, or I should say the condensation going up, is anionic. The rain coming down is cationic. The water in the lake is cationic. The water in the cloud is anionic. Why does it rain? Remember we talked about all those Milhouse units of energy? Well, in H2O, you're going to have 2 atoms of hydrogen. And let's say one atom of the hydrogen has 300 MUE of energy per in each of them. And in the oxygen, that's in the shell, and then let's say in the oxygen it has 200. And then of course it would have the one cation in the core as well. And let's say that had 100. I'm sorry, that would have 500 to 500 to 999. But let's say they're all 500. What happens is when the outer core, when the outer shell picks up enough more Milhouse units of energy coming from whether it's the condensation from other source, and these all go to 500, then it flip-flops. The whole thing turns inside out, and now you've got cationic water or rain that starts dropping down and falling to the earth. And it's the same thing when you distill water. When you heat up the anions and the cations so that the ions are moving so fast that the Milhouse units of energy are being lost very quickly, then what happens is when you get down to less than 500 and it turns into anionic, it's going to rise. The spin changes. The line of resistance changes. The line of electromagnetic force changes. It heads in the direction. Just like you have more potassium in your brain than anywhere else. Where's your brain? You don't walk on it. Your brain's in your head. Why? Because it's trying, all those anions are trying to get back up to the ionosphere, which is the home for anions in the planet. So there are your 4 isotopes. They can be anionic or cationic. There's your 3 anions all the time. Be careful, some people get this wrong. They will add others to it. But these are the only 3 anionic minerals or elements that we know of. And these are the only 4 isotopes or isomers that we know of. And all the rest are cationic. Everyone is cationic. That means whether it's manganese, manganese has 55 ions, in the shell and 1 ion in the core. Is that ion in the core going to be an anion or a cation? Ask yourself the question, see if you can get it right. I didn't hear anybody. Being silly here. It's going to be an anion. And these are going to be cations. Why? Because it's always the outer shell that determines whether it's an anion or a cation. I guess you could say the inner core does too, because whatever it is what it is. The outside is always going to be the opposite. Calcium, again, let's take that. It's going to be 1 and 40 in the shell. But calcium is an anion. So, if calcium is an anionic mineral element, what are those? And these are in the shell, those are going to be anions. These are going to be cations. You're going to know that these always, each one of these has 499 Milhouse units of energy in them, the anions. All right, that takes care of that. This is all in the lesson, of course. Again, Dr. Ream says, if you don't get this, you'll never get the rest of it. All right. Now, we talked about God, energy, now, we talked about the atoms, and then they go to the elements. Because remember, that the atoms, if you have an atom that has 1 cation, one anion, and 4, let's make it 7 cations, we know that's going to be lithium. I'll make sure. I believe so. Yeah. It's going to be lithium, so we know it's a cation. Therefore, when you know that it's a cation, you know that the minimum number of Milhouse units that can be in that particular ion would be 1 Milhouse unit in the core, 7 times 500 in the shell. So the bare minimum of energy in that is going to be 3,501 Milhouse units of energy. This becomes rather interesting when you're giving people foods, you know, and think about what you're doing when you're cooking foods. You are literally breaking down the Milhouse units of energy in those foods. You are lowering their energy capability. And you're also, because what happens is you heat it up, the bonds are broken, and the anion, the Milhouse units of energy can escape. Keep that in mind, because we do need to cook foods for people. I personally feel much better eating cooked foods, but I like to eat a lot of heavy cooked foods.
Do the green drink and the carrot juice.
The green drink and carrot juice, they can be helpful, but don't overdo them either. Too many people get into overdoing them. If it's a little good, if it's good, oh boy, ton must be better, you know? Believe me, that's my used to be my doctrine. I've made a lot of mistakes in life. All right, so we go from the, then we go to the compounds. Let's do one quick thing here, the molecules. Actually, molecules should be here, and then I should put compounds next to it. Now, a molecule does not have to be 2 different elements. If you have, obviously, if I have a pound of iron, which an iron I think is, what is it, 54? Fe. Actually, it's 56. Iron is 1 anion in the core and 56 cations in the shell. So, if you had a pound of it, and then we would have to figure out how much is in a pound, and we're going to do the math for that. That's when we'll start getting into logarithms, and we'll work those. Although we can write it all out, but it will be tremendously huge numbers. Which is fine. I sort of like looking at the huge numbers. It gives me better perspective. But anyhow, one anion, 56 cations, and so what happens is that if you have, let's say you had 10 of these, well, that's a molecule because it's made up of 10 atoms, more than one atom. But a compound is when you're going to take iron and add sulfur to it, and then you get ferrous sulfate. I think they use sulfurs with an F now. I think the old pH style is kind of gone, but maybe if you're in England, they use the pH spelling. In any case, so now we know what a molecule and a compound is. Now, on the frequency table, all right, the frequency, an element is going to be, where are we at time-wise? We are at 1 hour and a half, folks. I'm going to end this now, and what we're going to do is I will pick up on this in the next lesson, because we got a lot of work to do here to study each one of these, and it'll take me at least a half hour, 45 minutes to get through this. But I do want to explain it on video. So, like I said, you're only going to pay 12 months for this course, you folks who are paying your first month and the 11 after. I never charge any more, so you'll get the whole smash, even if we have to go 13 months on it. So keep this in mind. We're going to go to the to Beto's chart, and it basically is going to be one more, and then mankind will be right here. So you have the elements, you have here your compounds, two elements together, and here you have I'm going to reflect it in the way he says it. Here you have your one-celled organisms. Here you have your here insects. Yeah. Here you have your plants. Here you have your animals, birds, and I'm assuming fish. And here you have man. These are your frequencies. The elements, it takes at least 1 second for the, like in hydrogen, the anion in the core, the cation in the shell. It would take this a second to make one full rotation around that anion. So that's what this means. So when we're looking at like at anion with 50, when we're looking at iron, it's going to take 56 complete seconds for that wave to roll out. Well, that makes sense. You know, you put iron down on the ground, does it vanish away? No. Is it giving off a tremendous amount of heat? No. Because the movement in the ion is not, in the actual makeup of it is not that great. It's fast. Us, though, you feel your body, you've got heat coming off. And remember, your frequency, you're going around at around 20, getting it around, the male is getting, in the cell, 24 10 millionths of a second. That's how quickly it's moving around. There is a variable in there, and the female is going to be 26 10 millionths. And we've gone through these numbers before, but we'll go through them more deeply this again and show. But this is why this is what has to do with energy, because of this speed. of these electrons moving around, and there's a certain rate of energy being lost, and that means there's a certain rate of energy that has to be picked up according to that frequency. And that's how these numbers come about. And that's why once you know the frequency, then you know the diet. And we'll look at that more closely as well. I'd love to keep going. It's just such a fascinating subject. But that's where we're at right now. Keep this in mind till next week. I'll go back over this again. You're going to have the lesson topics, all the stuff in your lesson as well. Read through it all, please, and I will definitely follow up over it again. Most of it, I did get through most of it, but it gets you some more details, which I will follow up and over. I spent more time with the person than I did. Hopefully that gave you, though, a good understanding of how I'm working with people now, and how I want to get this thing to a point where you can also get the plots. And once you know where those plots are falling, you begin to see which minerals are needed, and we're going to get better at that too, plotting the minerals on the body. You'll be able to make the most fantastic diet for people, to have them respond as quickly as possible. There'll be no more shotgun type approaches anymore, just based because someone tells you, well, if the pH is here, this, if the pH is there, this, pH is there. You're going to know, because you're going to see where that line drops on the body. See, and you're going to know what mineral is in that organ, and you're going to know which one to give, because we're going to tell you the foods, blah, 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 blah. I thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.